And so, yeah, like, there's other places like that have values that didn't entirely line up with their history. You look at France, liberty, égalité, fraternité. That was not the case in Algeria. That was not the case in Indochina, and that was definitely not the case in sub-Saharan Africa in their French colonies.
Was that Archipelago, or what were you telling me, that book?
The Gulag Archipelago.
Archipelago.
By Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, and he has a quote that basically talks about history, right? Mm-hmm. He says that the first step of like authoritarianism
and oppression,
is to destroy the history.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense, because you destroy the history and you don't know how bad or good things were before. You don't know.
Yeah. I think it kind of muddies the water, because I think the counter, like, Nicole Hannah-Jones would say, the counter to that is, well, look what they did to the indigenous and enslaved people in this country, where they destroyed their histories and made it seem like, slavery and segregation, and there's still some people that still hold these views today, that segregation was good for black people and white people, because there wasn't as much social tension in society as there is now. And I'm not saying that that's a fair criticism.
There's got to be so few people that believe that, I don't know.
It's not as few as you would think. And even just the whole rewriting of, like, gay liberation history, of saying that, hey, gay people were much happier in the closet than they are now, because of the social pressure of having to conform to a society that doesn't really fit into your your lifestyle. Because you look at
I haven't heard that. That's an interesting way of putting it.
Well, you look at it now, like Valentine's Day. Most Valentine's Day are most Valentine's movies are geared towards heterosexual couples. Like, I haven't.
Yeah, I mean.
Like, you never seen really too many rom-coms about
To a point, but.
I'm just saying it as an example. I'm not saying that.
But also in every movie, there's like always a gay couple, like
or at least one gay character.
Everyone, and it's like
even when they're not gay, which is has gotten heat too.
Right. So I don't know about that.
But I think the thing about slavery is more ingrained. America as a whole has had over 400 years of slavery from the United States perspective. But even if you look at the wider perspective, the Spanish Empire had slavery up until, the 1800s. And even if you look at Brazil didn't outlaw slavery fully until like 1890. And so you gotta look at it from that perspective. And even if you look at it from the, civil rights perspective, I recently posted that, Nelson Mandela got out of prison in 1990. That's not that long.
1990?
1990.
Jeez, man.
Yeah. So that's not that very long ago. That's within many of our lifetimes. And, he didn't become president until, 99, I believe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or something like that. And so it's not very far history that we have to look back at injustice, but the long arc of fixing those issues, especially the injustices that, Colin Kaepernick brought up with policing and sort of the brutality that minorities, especially, black people in the United States face, and, even other desperate minorities around the world as well face.
I'm glad it's being brought up.
Yeah.
But this is what America's about. I'm going back to this thing. I feel like
we have to fix our problem.
What I'm saying is that, like, that doesn't mean you have to tear down the basis of the whole country. I mean, let's take another step towards fixing this thing.
Yeah.
Why break it down from the beginning?
And that's the issue I have with the 1619 project, is because with all these critical race theories, initiatives, they never really go about fixing the problem. They just kind of point out they don't go about solutions to the problem. They just kind of point them out. Like, yes, we did have slavery. Black people were oppressed for X number of years, and there was a civil rights movement, Martin Luther King tried to fix it. People killed him, and here we are now with still racist police officers, shooting and killing unarmed black men.
When you simplify it like that, it's a disservice.
Yeah,
right?
It's a disservice to the history.
It's a disservice to our history because obviously
we have made progress.
I'm sure if you talk to any black person, I'm sure if you take an 80-year-old black person and say, hey, where are you at in your life? Like, take when you were 10 years old, 20 years old, compare it to now. Where do you think you're at? Like, I have to believe they'd be like, oh.
Well, but that's the problem. Like, it's so politicized because, one thing that people didn't want to bring up in the Trump era is that, yes, black employment did go down.
You're saying black unemployment?
Black unemployment did go down.
Yeah.
Like, black employment was at an all-time high of what, it had been probably for a couple of decades. Probably since, at least early in our lifetimes, it was probably the lowest since it had been, pre-recession, Great Recession.
Things were going good, man.
Yeah.
Things were going good for a lot of people.
And even the overall, income of individuals was going up.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, man, like, what's to be done? Like, how do you fix what's going on now? What do you do? Because I saw this graph that really made like a really good picture. It illustrated it well for me in my head. Is that like since slavery had been abolished, and it was basically a graph of white people versus black people and their salaries, and it showed white people and black people, and like the white people are just the angle at which things are increasing is higher.
Yeah,
and so you're like, okay, so obviously different starting point, and a lot of issues like over the course of time. But I'm talking about right now. Like, what do you do right now to help fix those disparities?
Well, I think if you want to have the greatest impact, you have to have, and especially not to have the most resentment. Because one of the issues that people had in like the early, I believe, 70s and into the 80s was that they're just going to fix these programs by proportionally having more minorities in these positions, and that's essentially what affirmative action is. They're going to do it in education, they're going to do it in employment, and things like that. And really, it didn't really help black people that much. Like, obviously, there were a few who had the opportunity, like most notably, Barack Obama said, without affirmative action, he wouldn't be president. And so, like, it did probably help a select few of African Americans or, by and large minorities and women, but it didn't really overall bring up, the overall standing of African Americans, because the poverty rates are still, abnormally high on average compared to the national average or, nationwide. And more importantly, if you look at the top 1% of black people who are earners in this country, the disparity between them and the rest of their group is much higher than any other group, including white people.
That's weird. That's an interesting...
So the top 1% of black people are actually... There's more inequality within that group than outside of that group.
Interesting.
And so I think that affirmative action did help, numbers of black people, but you have to have a program in ways that open opportunity for everyone to succeed.
Right.
And the greatest opportunity for that is to, have people understand that, diversity is our strength, but we have to have these values in such a place that they allow people to succeed. And whether that's, reform of our education system, maybe having some innovation or things like that infused in there, especially in, communities that are disadvantaged, we have to start working on those solutions. I don't think we can keep, stating the obvious and saying that, hey, black people are still poor. Like, okay, like, what are we going to do to fix some of those disparities?
Yeah, I think the organizations like these nonprofit organizations that are available in the communities that need it most to help teach kids entrepreneurship, to help teach kids, certain
financial literacy.
That type of stuff is going to be so important because it's obvious handouts are not the answer. Like
it's unsustainable.
It's good that there's a net, like we talked about before, but it doesn't allow people to prosper.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we saw from the GameStop thing is that quite a number of people who were minorities did make money off of that. They decided to make money off the stock market.
Yeah.
And it's more power to them, and I think that's a wonderful thing, and that's what we have to be doing, is that we have to allow people to have the system work in such a way that it's not only sustainable but gives them dignity and allows them the people who are motivated to succeed.
What I don't like is when they say, okay, now we need to diversify this board, so we need 2 white people, 2 black people, 2 Asian people, 2 Mexican people, 2 white, they put this diversity panel up there. We have to have this, and I'm saying like
Joe Biden especially.
So what I'm saying is like, to what degree are we going to do this? Okay, so
we're going to do it.
But we don't have a gay person up there. We need a gay person, but we don't have
a transgender.
We don't have somebody from American Samoa up there. We don't have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, to what point? Are you going to do that?
Well, the level
because you can do that forever if you wanted to.
Well, and the thing is only in certain things. Like, no one's saying that we need more American Samoas playing basketball.
Well, maybe we do.
Maybe we do, but you don't hear the call for that. We don't see that we need more transgender sanitation workers.
Sure, we might.
We might, but no one's calling for it.
But I'm saying.
But the thing is,
to what degree are we going to go with it then?
Well, the thing is, identity politics it cuts both ways. That's the problem. When you say that we need this group for this group, well, Colombians